Welcome to Inside the 18. I'm Michael Magid, live from Hollywood, California. With me, no Saskia Weber, no Omar Zeenni. They will be joining us momentarily. And the reason that they can't be here right now, guys, is because honestly, nobody can have a better introduction than our guest panelist today. You guys know him. You love him. World-renowned sports psychologist, host of the Sports Psych Show, the one and only Dan Abrahams is back. What's up, man?
Well, I wish I could match your live from Hollywood, California. I mean, live from Cheltenham, England doesn't quite have the same ring as live from Hollywood, California. But there you go. I'm good. I'm live from Cheltenham, England, as I said. And it's an honor and pleasure, as always, to be here, Michael.
I mean, look, I mean, honestly, man, I mean, it's incredible just because I think we've talked about it so many times, you know, when you come on the show, just the link between sports psychology and the goalkeeping profession is just so profound. Not saying it's not profound in other sports or in other positions, you know, on the outfield as well, too. But there really seems to be, for whatever reason, a huge fervor and hunger for, you know, your type of field, you know, when it comes to goalkeeping.
They're always the first players to seek me out. If I do a presentation, a facilitation somewhere at a club with a team, they're always the first players to seek me out after I've spoken, usually to hit me for how bad the presentation was. No, not really. No, they just ask smart questions. It's great. They just come straight to me. And I just think it's because it's so, I mean, having been a professional golfer, I've had so many players say, well, we can train more like a professional golfer because physiologically, you know, you don't quite have the same amount of load as an outfield player. So, you know, there's that there. So it just seems, because again, success and failure is so in your face as a goalkeeper. It's such a fraught position, if you like. You know, let's think about the Euros. Let's think about Sunday night. I'm just about recovered, Michael, England losing in the final. But, you know, it is a very psychological position. And so subsequently, I completely agree. It's the most psychological position on the field, on the pitch. And so subsequently, I do find I work with quite a few goalkeepers.
You know, and I'm glad that you brought up the whole thing with the Euros, because you know, I think we might touch on it a little bit. You know, when in regards to once Saskia comes here and everything like that. But for whatever reason, the goalkeepers turned up in this tournament. I mean, just next level. I'm next level, and I'm not saying that the outfield players didn't turn up for this tournament, but we did have some phenomenal performances by goalkeepers. I mean, you're talking about a goalkeeper winning the golden ball in Donnarumma and everything like that. And, you know, it did come back down to penalties. And I apologize that I have to even put you back in that mindset of Sunday. You know, you already mentioned where you were coming live from.
Damn you.
But I think honestly, Pickford, you know, performed admirably based on the situation that he was in. And, you know, can you kind of walk us through kind of what's going on mentally for a goalkeeper in that situation? Penalty kicks at Wembley in the Euro final, especially for somebody like a Jordan Pickford.
Yeah, I will do. And just to say, I said to you off air, and I'll say to your huge audience, no doubt, millions of people globally, I have a slight cough, a non-COVID cough. So if I'm a little bit chesty and a bit coughy, I do apologize from the outset here. And I've got my English. It looks like a cup of tea, doesn't it? But it's actually just water. So I will do my best here, Michael. Look, I mean, wow, what a tournament! It's funny. I am gutted. I'm gutted for England. I'm so pleased for Italy. I have, as a sports psychologist, I've become a bit result agnostic of recent years, because I have, you know, clients lots of clients who are not English, and so subsequently I find myself supporting all kinds of different teams in all kinds of different countries in different sports, and so that's what I mean by result agnostic. It's not I wanted England to win, but it's suddenly now emotionally not the end of the world for me. So, as I say, what a tournament. I agree. Goalkeepers were brilliant from what I saw. I didn't see every single game. You know, that Italian goalkeeper helps when you're 8 foot tall or whatever he is. I mean, that is intimidating, isn't it, from a perceptual perspective? And Jordan Pickford, before I get onto the penalties, I mean, just so good. And he has been working with a sports psychologist. I don't know which one, but whoever it is has done a fantastic job. And or Jordan Pickford has done a wonderful job working on his psychology. So he seemed a lot calmer. There were moments when he wasn't, and that's always. It feels like something Jordan Pickford is always going to have to work on. He's that classic passionate goalkeeper, a little bit on edge, a little bit woe, a little bit way. And, he can tend to get slightly overly activated at times. And that can be a challenge that goalkeepers have. Please excuse my coughing, Michael. And so I think, he did well. He did really well in general across the tournament. He kept his calm. And that helped him execute his motor skills. So the penalty kicks. Well, what's confronting them? Look, I mean, I think the first thing to say is I don't think anybody would disagree with me that there is an element of nothing to lose as a goalkeeper. I do think, in my humble opinion, I'll probably get the wrath of goalkeeping coaches here, maybe, but I think the onus is on the player to score more than anything else. And I'm not saying there's not a great science and art and skill to saving penalties, but I think the onus first and foremost is on the player to score. So there is that element of a volume of pressure that's been turned down for a goalkeeper. You're not necessarily expected to save the penalties. So there's that to say to begin with. What have we experienced? We've seen the Italian goalkeeper using his height, perceptually closing off the goal, making it look smaller. That seemingly makes a difference. We've got Jordan Pickford on the line there, like other goalkeepers, walking up and down, again, perceptually changing the landscape for a player in front of him in this tournament. So a goalkeeper can engage in that. It strikes me that a goalkeeper is always striving to read the cues, the clues, the triggers from the player in front of them in terms of which way they're going to go. It was interesting that obviously Rashford, who always uses a stutter, did that, and Donnarumma actually kept his kind of position, didn't commit, and all right, he went the wrong way, but Rashford missed it in the end, hit the post. So I think there's a turn down volume of pressure. I think it's perceptually demanding in as much as you've got to try to monitor what the opposing player is doing and guess what the opposing player is thinking. And then you've got to commit. Then you've got to commit to your action. And that's what I say. I just think there's so much cognitive load. There's so much mental pressure on the opposing player, on the outfield player to score. And I know goalkeepers take penalties. There's so much pressure there that a lot of that narrative tends to come with the penalty taker, him or herself. But I certainly think that, whether it's Pickford, whether it was the Italian goalkeeper, they did such a good job.
Yeah, and I know. First off, I think you just brought up so much important information right there. And by the way, every goalkeeper out there will tell you that if the onus is on the outfield player, in their mind, it's not. Especially when it's one of those situations where it comes down to, you're like, well, if I don't save this, they win the entire tournament, which is just talk about. I mean, my head would explode. I couldn't imagine. I mean, Wembley Stadium, I mean, what was there, 80,000 people there? Was that the first capacity crowd type of situation in England for a massive England event right there? I mean, it just, just
for some time. For some time. Yeah.
And that just, to me, I think honestly, like you were saying about Jordan, I think especially with for the brutal scrutiny he's gotten ever since he left Sunderland and went to Everton, every single little thing that he did picked apart, and for him and for people saying prior to coming into the tournament that, like, oh, should he be England's number one still, should so-and-so be pushing him and everything like that, all of that. And I think you talking about the fact that him working with somebody in that field you can see it. You can see it in the performance in the tournament, is what I'm trying to say.
I think if you're a goalkeeper and you're playing at that level and you're not seeing somebody, then you're. I think that's a mistake, personally. I think every player needs a mental skills framework. I think every goalkeeper needs a mental skills framework. I mean, his understudy for that tournament was Aaron Ramsdale, who, when I was working with AFC Bournemouth, whether it was Mark Travers for the Republic of Ireland, whether it was Aaron Ramsdale, we worked on mental skills frameworks alongside his goalkeeping coach, Ant White, who now actually works with England football. So I think, in my opinion, even if a goalkeeper says, well, I'm good in that area, I think to give them the best chance to optimize their performance, to help them high perform consistently under pressure, having mental skills frameworks, having that framework reinforced, working on it with somebody, talking with somebody about it, maybe changing it from time to time, being able to talk with somebody week to week about the pressures of what that they're experiencing. I think that's just something that you probably have to do these days with the that microscopic lens that the press have, that the public have, that driving social media comments. It's just, as you quite rightly say, it's so brutal, and it drives a player's day-to-day narrative, which influences how they feel, which in turn influences how they behave and how they perform, how they train. So what Jordan Pickford has done, great, fantastic, because I think the perception can be that, well, I don't want to do this because it might be perceived as negative or that I've got a problem. But I think he's been quite open about it. We all know, a lot of people know about it. It's been in the press. He's been open about it. He hasn't said who it is or how it's functioned, how it's operated, but he's said about it. And look, together they've done a fantastic job. But you're quite right in saying, how much pressure has that kid been under? Just an overwhelm of pressure. And also, I just want to come back to a point you made. You kind of schooled me there in the art of psychology. You're quite right to say that one shouldn't be presumptuous about the narrative a goalkeeper has at any point. And if the narrative of a goalkeeper is, actually, no, the pressure is on me because I want, this is 1v1, this is man on man here, or this is player on player, I want to save this penalty. That's a very, very fair thing to say, Michael. And if a goalkeeper creates that inner story, they're putting pressure on themselves. One could argue they need to turn down the volume of pressure on themselves and actually remind themselves, well, I can't completely control this. All I can do is go through my process. All I can do is go through my habits, my behaviors that I think will give me the best chance to save this penalty. That's all I can do. I think they need to weave that narrative. But you're correct in saying there's nothing wrong with a bit of pressure. Come on. This is me versus this other person. I want to save this. So that's a very fair thing to say.
And I think, one of the great things, Dan, that you've been saying right here, and I think I want a lot of young goalkeepers out there to hear this, and also a lot of parents out there to hear this, is that a lot of times we kind of wait until the after to seek out advice or counsel or help, whatever you want to call it. Before we start the process. And I know how adamant you are, especially, on the Sports Psych show, on how this is a consistent part of your training. This is not just something has fallen apart, let me go and try to fix it. No, it's the same thing as going to the gym. These mental skills are so vital to get to the level of a Jordan Pickford.
They're vital because how we function as human beings, or the way we function as human beings, If we take a game of soccer works in milliseconds. It takes us a second to get our footwork right. It takes a second to get our handling right. It takes a second to save a ball or to catch a cross. But the brain is working in milliseconds. The brain trumps soccer for speed every single time. And so having tools, techniques within this mental skills framework that you take out onto the pitch with you, out onto the field with you, and then can go and execute, is that kind of not only a safety mechanism to help you deal with any kind of negative thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, etc., but also to help you find your sort of optimal mental state, if you like. It can function as confidence cues. It can function as a behavioral blueprint of who you want to be out there on the field. So there's that to bear in mind. I mean, another factor here to say is what people often underestimate is the power of your internal that drives your external. The way that your brain interacts with your body is sending data to your brain, not even in seconds, in milliseconds. It's actually a process. I'm going to throw in a horrible word here, so please excuse me. It's a process called interoception. Interoception. Please excuse that word, but what that is the brain scanning the body in milliseconds. It's scanning it, and what the brain does is it turns the data that it receives from the body into feelings. So goalkeepers, outfield players, goalkeepers are feeling all the time, and they experience pleasant feelings. I feel good, I feel great, or unpleasant feelings. I feel low. I don't feel very pleasant right now. I don't feel like it today. And then another form of feeling is activated feelings. I feel up for it, or deactivated feelings. I feel lethargic. I feel flat. So, excuse me, I'm dealing with cough feelings right now. So, one of the things of the goalkeeper, and I think we get. Hey, Saskia. One of the things.
I'm feeling.
I'm feeling. So one of the things that goalkeepers have to do well, not every single second, but one of the things they have to deal with are these feelings that are happening to them. They're happening to them all the time, and that's often underestimated. And so we want mental frameworks to be able to optimize our mindset, to be able to deal with the destructive, unhelpful, negative sensations, feelings, emotions, and thoughts that might happen to us, because these things rise up from our body. So there's that as well. And off the field, away from the game, as you've said, we want to help players create the kind of narrative, the day-to-day narrative that is optimal for them, that helps them feel great come game day. So that's a snapshot, man. That's just a snapshot. So there's a whole raft of things there. We want to be able to train optimally. Well, so we need great learners. Well, learning is a psychological process. We can talk about that. So, there's a whole raft of reasons as to why it would be useful for a goalkeeper to make a conscious decision to proactively seek out a sports psychologist or resources written by or narrated by sports psychologists, to be proactive, to do it intentionally rather than reactive, rather than after the event, as you've quite rightly said.
I mean, it's I think, I want to add this on with Saskia, now that Saskia's joined us here. 99 World Cup winner, Saskia Weber. I had to give you an intro. But we've been talking.
It's just over the years.
I'm feeling quite emotional about that intro right now. Go ahead. I'm just kidding.
Angel City co-owner.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
But obviously, we were discussing just the fact that how it's becoming very much more commonplace now for young goalkeepers to seek out counsel, to make it part of their training regimen. And I know that you've talked about this in the past that, when you were coming up, it wasn't as common, and it wasn't as I don't want to say that it was negated or anything like that, but it just wasn't in the forefront the way it is today.
Was that to me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, my microphone. So you're hearing me through the computer. No, and I did seek out counseling in college and stuff. I'm glad that my coaches at Rutgers, had that forethought, and I knew I needed it, especially playing at the national team level, juggling college, juggling everything. But I agree. Like it wasn't something that you did when I was that most players did, and it needs to be just as much a part of your training as training, as goalkeeping, as working on distribution, as anything, because the mental side of the game is as important as the physical, if not more. And if you can, train, you have to train your mind to play your best. So yeah. I did.
Yeah. So let's
I think that was your question. I think that was your question. I'm sorry. You did one of those.
You did really okay? Well there.
I did okay. I'm a little all over the place because I just got off this UCLA meeting and it dawned on me all of a sudden that I got 2.5 weeks till season starts.
Oh my gosh.
It's kind of crazy. Like, it's like, because, normally you come off the spring and it's, it's not as intense, but obviously we just came off a regular season in the spring and national championship and everything. And now I start again in 2.5 weeks. So that kind of was like, summer's over.
Well, let's because no, that's okay. I know Dan. I know Dan's trying to save his voice, so we'll do our best to step in and chat as well. Let's just kind of move into this topic, guys. Today's topic is buzzwords. This is a topic that I kind of threw at Dan, I think a few weeks ago in an email, and it was kind of based on a conversation that we had with Tom Wheel at Norwich City, head of academy goalkeeping over there, and he was discussing kind of the fact that for your session design, you need to plan your behavior as well. And we kind of got into a little bit of a discussion about how language and the words that you use can affect the behavior of your players. So Dan, for maybe some people out there who are not as familiar with what we're referring to, what do we mean by buzzwords or language?
So before we do that, I need to teach you how to say Norwich City correctly.
Okay.
You're not allowed to say Norwich. It's not
Norwich.
Yeah.
Norwich City.
Norwich City.
So I leave that stuff up to Michael.
Imagine there's an IDGE on the end rather than a CH. It's Norwich, and it's not.
Norwich.
Don't pronounce the R. It's not It's not Norwich. It's Norwich. Norwich. Yeah.
Hey, at least I didn't try an accent. Then Saskia would be all over me.
Oh, Mike and his accents. Norwich. Mike, you remind me of Joey on Friends when you try to do your accents.
Oh boy, that is not a good thing.
Can you do a Norwich accent for me, Michael? It's basically it sounds like a pirate.
It sounds like a pirate.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. Lovely day in Norwich today, isn't it?
That's a kind of a Norwich.
Not an Irish. Not an Irish pirate.
Yeah, top of the morning to you.
Not an Irish pirate.
It's a strange one in England because you've got kind of like, and I'm just insulting the whole of England here. So God, I'm going to throw out the country, but basically, if you go to the very west of England, they speak like a pirate, and I
want to be a pirate.
Yeah. And there's a reason why that
Come on,
you associate.
We've got practice today.
That's awesome. That just sounded like a pirate. What it sounded like. The reason is, can we just go off piste a little bit here, Michael?
Absolutely.
Sure, absolutely.
This is making my day. Sorry.
The first person. This is my uninteresting fact of the day. The first person. This is my understanding of how this works. The first person to play a pirate on the silver screen. You're in Hollywood, right, Michael? The first person to play a pirate in Hollywood was Errol Flynn.
Right.
You've heard of the actor Errol Flynn.
Yeah.
Errol Flynn was from west of England. And he decided in his first role as a pirate to adopt a West of England accent, which is like that "hurrah" type thing, right? Okay, hurrah me hearties.
What? This is the coolest
No
fact
way.
ever.
And so that's why we now think, that's why we always associate pirates with
Talking
that
like
type
that?
of accent. Talking
No
like that.
way.
It's only
Oh.
because of Errol Flynn.
I had no idea. I just assumed that's what they talked like back in the
What?
Caribbean.
I know.
No,
I'm like,
no,
I just was
no.
watching some pirate movie about I don't know, Captain Morgan or something. That's not
Yeah,
how
yeah.
they talked. That's not how they talked.
Very, very
It's just how
unlikely.
Errol Flynn talked.
Yeah.
Can
Yeah,
we
a
just do an hour on this? I want to do an hour on this
Well,
and
now
break down
because
some
I was
of
watching The
psychology
Godfathers,
behind this.
and all I
Yeah.
was thinking about is how whatchamacallit came up with the way he was talking, The Godfather, and now, but that's not how all
Right.
Godfathers talk.
He had, yeah, the Godfather. So Marlon Brando had those things in his cheeks,
Things
didn't
in
he?
his cheeks, right? Yeah.
I'm full of useless facts. But there is a possibility
I
that
love
they
this.
may.
This is the greatest fact ever, though, because I have a friend
There's a-
that's obsessed with pirates, and when I tell her that it was Errol Flynn,
There is a possibility that some of them spoke like that because a lot of the ships at that period of time, because pirates were very much, they were intercepting Spanish and Portuguese ships, getting gold from
right?
the New World, right, from where you are now. And a lot of the ships set off from Bristol and Plymouth, which is where basically the West Country is, which isn't far from where I am
So
right now.
they did probably talk like that.
So some of them possibly did, and that's why Errol Flynn chose to adopt that accent. My understanding is because many of them set sail in this region, but there will be many pirates who probably
Right.
spoke quite the Queen's English, like oh hello, old chap. That
Wait,
type
you're
of thing.
supposed to be a pirate. You can't talk like that.
That's as much a pirate.
I would
reckon.
like you to know that I'm descended from a pirate.
Are you?
I am.
Well, I bet that
My
pirate was really
great grandfather was Gold Sword, which was a Dutch pirate.
No, really.
Yep.
Wow, they were at that stage. They were really clashing.
Look at Mike's
with
like,
the English.
I don't think he spoke like that though. He was Dutch.
I mean, all I'm thinking right now is that, what type of behavior would you get from a goalkeeper if you came out in an Errol Flynn pirate type accent here in the United States? What type? How would they react?
Clear the ball! Clear the ball, mateys! Clear the ball!
Oh my gosh! By the way, the numbers have started going through the roof. More people are interested in this than they are in goalkeeping or sports
It's
psychology.
amazing. I can't wait. The UCLA goalkeepers are going to be like, clear the ball! Clear the ball!
You do really good. That's genetic there. If you are descended, that's really good.
David.
Michael's was hopeless. Yours is authentic there, Saskia.
Because it's in there because I'm a descendant from a pirate. See?
If you came to England and you lived in Plymouth or Bristol, people would go, so you're from around here, are you then?
I love it.
I mean, they just think you're so.
Okay.
Actually, where I was going with that story is basically what you find in England is if you go to the west of England, they speak like that to a degree. Then you go through the middle of England and they speak posh to a degree. And then you go over to the east of England, which is where Norwich, not Norwich, Norwich is, they speak like pirates again. So it kind of goes, oh, army hardies, and then, oh, hello, old chap, and then, oh, army hardies again. It kind of goes through a range of different accents. So,
I got it. This is the best 15 minutes spent talking about pirates ever. And I love Dave's comment. He's like, "What have I tuned into?"
I'm just gonna call this episode like the origins of pirates. Well, we're going to talk about words and the importance of words and the importance of tone and cadence and volume and things like that. So, you could affect a pirate. Next time you go out, you do your session design, you do your activity design, just put at the top accent pirate, and that's how you can present.
Oh my God. Deliver. Can you imagine if all the goalkeepers would speak like a pirate for a day? Oh, how funny would that be? That would be so funny. Okay, I like that.
Okay, well that's my
I'll
first
tape
tip.
it. I'll tape it and send it to you.
That's my first psychological tip of the day. Where were we? What do you want?
We were talking about trigger words or keywords.
We were talking about buzzword. We were talking about the definition of buzzword.
Oh, that boring stuff. Okay, all right. Okay, so
Dan's next book is going to be called Pirate Lore. So that's
Pirate Tough. Follow up to Soccer Tough. Pirate Tough. How to be a tough pirate. So I'll have a slurp of my water. Saskia, I've got a bit of a cough, so I'm kind of.
I can see it.
I'm pushing through. All right. Well, look, words matter, don't they? And it's funny that I'd be interested to listen to a little bit about what Mr. Wheel had to say on this matter. Please excuse me, guys. So, because I'll be interested, Michael, to hear what he had to say, because this kind of almost takes us back, and I don't want to reverse up and go to kind of the thing that we talk about often on this podcast. You know, since the first time we met, we've talked a lot about game face. You know, because game face, my technique of game face is based on words. It's based on the power of words. I mean, what we know in neuroscience, not just psychology, but biopsychology. Biopsychology is neuroscience. What we know is the language centers of the brain are connected to things like your heart rate, your hormonal release. They're not connected to your chest at all. If I could, I would manage that. Your hormonal release, your glucose uptake, things like that, and that makes a difference to how you feel. So the words that you're using kind of influence the emotions you're experiencing, the feelings you're experiencing, right the way through to the granular sort of sensations you're experiencing. And so language is important. The word you're using is important. Now, I tend to trade, and this is coming back to the game face idea, I tend to trade on action-based words. So it's really interesting that, is it Tom Wheel, the
yes,
Norwich?
Tom Wheel.
So Tom, yeah. I know of Tom, and I know of his great work. And so it's interesting that Tom is talking from a behavioral perspective. We could trade the word behavior for action in many respects. Behaviors are actions, especially in the field of sport, right? Now, in our sessions, we can promote the kind of behaviors, the kind of actions we want to see by using action-based words. Relentless, dominant, sharp, alert, alive, lively. If you're setting up an activity, and you guys would be more well acquainted with this than me, so you could think about the activities you do on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you've just said, Saskia, wow, I've got pre-season starting 2.5 weeks. Okay, and you're starting to think about how you're going to shape your activities and what challenges you've got ahead. You'll want to see your goalkeepers execute those activities with certain behaviors, in the style of certain actions. I want to see sharp. I want to see alert. I want to see alive. I want to see lively. Show me lively. We're going to do this. We're going to do this handling activity, handling and footwork. Okay. Show me lively. Show me lively. Show me lively. I want to see lively here. Show me lively. So these kind of action-based words, even if you take it away from my technique of game face, just bringing these words into your training, what you're doing is you're almost like creating a blueprint of how you want that goalkeeper to enact, to act, to be, to do. I want you to do this in the style of alert and lively. I want you to be sharp. These action-based. Sorry, go on, Saskia.
No, it's an action word. I mean, I never understood what the hell game face meant anyway. Like, I don't. So, what the heck is a game face? Like, everything's different. But to say an action word like "show me lively," show me this makes sense to me. That's something I can be like, okay, now I understand, because that it evokes an emotion in me lively, right? Game face doesn't invoke anything in me, but lively does.
But Saskia, I think you just brought up a really good point there, Dan, and that is you were talking about how important words are and how important language is. If Saskia doesn't resonate, if the term game face doesn't resonate to Saskia, then you need to find another way to get that same galvanization out of that player, correct?
So I do want to affirm here that when I say game face, the game face is the technique. What game face is, it is the action-based words. So if you've got a player,
I understand. Game face, so it's game face, and then underneath are the action-based words.
Yes.
Understood.
So an example would be, and I'm conscious that we've spoken a lot about this on this podcast, so please excuse me, but like one goalkeeper I work with who plays at the very highest level here in England has a game face of sharp, dominant, a black being the Atletico Madrid goalkeeper, sharp and dominant. So let's take a black away and let's just use sharp and dominant. If I had access to that goalkeeper's coach, which I don't because I work independently of the team that he plays for, I would be saying to that goalkeeper coach, hey, come on, this player has picked these two words, sharp and dominant, as the words that resonate with him the most.
And so that's his game face.
That's his game face, sharp, dominant, and black, but just sharp and dominant. And so rather than the goalkeeping coach saying, come on, I want to see your game face, which he or she can absolutely do, it's actually taking that and go, show me sharp here. Okay, your game face is sharp and dominant. Sharp and dominant are two words that are important to you. Show me sharp and dominant, sharp and dominant. You've got to be able to be, do, and act these words. And that's so be able to extract those words from a player can be a useful way to do this. So rather than it becoming from your own vocabulary, your own schema, your own map of the world, actually getting this from the player, can be useful. And you can do that by asking them about them at their best. Tell me about your best game, or tell me about your dream game. And so extracting these words, and you can offer up a few action-based words. Is it athletic? Is it lively? Is it dominant? Is it sharp? Is it upbeat? What is it? Positive? Is it confident? What is it? And even now, as I'm saying them, look, I'm kind of, I can't help but go a bit like that when I say positive. I can't help but go like that when I say confident. And so players can. The key here, guys, is that players can embody those words. They can be them and do them and act them. They can be and do and act them from head to toe and from toes to head, and they can show you them. You can say, look, what I want you to do here, the main objective here from a technical perspective is your handling. Okay, but I want you to do that in the style of these action-based words. I want you to do this handling sharp and lively, sharp and lively, sharp and lively. Show me that, show me that, show me that. You might be feeding the ball to the player and saying to them, sharp and lively, sharp and lively, show me that, show me that, show me that. And so you're getting them to embody those words, you can do that quickly, you can do that loudly, you can change the cadence of that, the rhythm of that, you can play about with that. It's such a great way to integrate psychology into your activity, because you're not just training them technically in that moment, you're training them mentally in that moment. You're impacting their behavior and everything that's under that behavior, the internal that drives the external.
I absolutely love what you were just saying right there, because it was just making me just think in my own mind right here that if you say, because I love what you said about show me, because to me, that's such a trainable thing. That's such a teachable thing. If you explain what these words mean, or what type of actions you're looking for from these words, and then you say, show me, I can do that. I can do that much better than if somebody just tells me, I need you to be sharper. I need you to be cleaner. First off, that right there puts me in a defensive position that I'm not clean. I'm not sharp. But say, show me. Now I'm picturing it in my head, and now I'm going to basically, I feel like I'll be able to remanifest this, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I think the verbiage or the wording of I need Like, I need, and coaches do that all the time. I need you guys to be tougher. I need you to be sharper. I need you to be this. But that wording of I need is a negative term, in my opinion, from the top. There's a different way to approach that. You know me, Mike, and you know that the way I deal with my goalkeepers is not, it's positive. It's positive. Like, you know what I mean? Like, positive reinforcement, targeted constructive criticism. Let's work together on how we can figure this out and stuff like that. Like, so.
I love what you've both said there, and you've both made some really pertinent points. I think I love, Michael, that you picked up on show me there, show me. I'm often saying to clients that I kind of work with outside of their team, I'll just say to them, imagine there's a camera on you and you've got to show that it's a player cam. It's a Michael cam or a Saskia cam. You've got to show that camera, sharp and alert or lively and relentless. Keep showing it. But, if you're the coach there in that moment, you can actually verbally say, show me lively, show me alert, show me while you're doing it. I mean, as you say, it is really, really powerful. And I love what you've said, Saskia, affirming, what Michael said in terms of coaches can have the propensity, not everybody does, but can have the propensity to say, well, I need to see this. And I understand why they say that. I do understand. And I want to offer a little psychological technique here that you can utilize to advance this, actually. It's, as a psychologist, you're often using a technique called scaling. And as the name suggests, a simple scale of 1 to 10. Right. And what you can do midway through the activity, or at the end of the activity, or between reps, let's just say, you can ask a player, you can say to player, okay, all right, how do you think that went? Give me a mark out of 10 for alert and lively. Let's say that player said, his or her keywords are alert and lively. And you've been feeding that to them. Show me alert and lively. Show me alert and lively. You've been doing whatever activity you're doing. Now,
what a great coach.
In that sort of rest, that break, you can say, okay, give me a mark out of 10 for alert and lively, and with 10 being, just amazing, awesome, 1 being really poor, not alert and lively at all. Give me a mark out of 10 for that. So you can get from a player in an unemotional way, excuse me, a mark. So that player might say, yeah, I think I did quite well there. 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10. I think I did well. Now, you as a coach could offer up there and say, well, I felt I think you did well. I'll give you a 7 out of 10. Okay, so I thought you still had room for a bit more, but I appreciate you're giving yourself 8 out of 10. I give you 7 out of 10. Then you can say to the player, okay, 8 out of 10, I hear you. What would 9 out of 10 look like? What would you be doing if you could give yourself 9 out of 10 for that? What would be happening there? And that player might give you something simple back. They might just say, well, I'd just be a bit more alert and sharp, or alert and lively in that. Okay,
hey, Dan,
go and show me that. Yeah, please.
Dan, we had a great question pop up. So, Mike.
So David Downs just asked this question, so we just wanted to kind of throw it in there because I've never thought of this before, and I think you could definitely shed some light. He goes, can a repeated action create a word rather than the other way around, so that creates an understanding for both player and coach?
It's a good question.
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, I would say as long as you can extract from the player what that repeated action means to them, what they're experiencing in that repeated action, and help them break that down to a key word, an action-based word. So absolutely you can. But could you guys give me an example of what that repeated action could be, for instance?
Well, that's a good question, David, because I know he's listening. Like, what can you give an example of the repeated action? That's a good question.
I'm thinking in my type of my head, like, let's say something as simple as, you see a player, I'll use something that's a very exciting moment, a top hand save, right? So let's type hand save. And, I say that dynamic, And so now they know, like, whenever I say dynamic, it's a dynamic movement. It's a dynamic movement.
Or explosive.
Explosive. Yep. Something like that. And as long as there's an understanding, but my concern sometimes when it comes to language, Dan, and I don't know how you feel about this too, is that, players move from environment to environment. And if the language is different in the different environments, they can sometimes get very confused because a coach is saying one thing, but they mean another. And then they go to another environment and a coach is saying one thing and they mean another.
Yeah, which is why it can be really important to extract the word from the player. And so speaking towards your, top hand save, and you've used the word dynamic or Saskia explosive, I think getting the word, what you could say is, I'm going to sound very psychology here, but okay, in that activity, I noticed that you made some really good, for me as your coach, I thought you made some really good top hand saves there. That was awesome there. What did you experience there? Tell me about
good.
that.
Yeah.
What were you doing? What were you experiencing?
And then they might use a word for it.
Precisely.
And so they might say, I really felt powerful in that moment. So not explosive, not this. And so if that's their key word for how they felt, then maybe that's what then I change my thing and utilize that for that individual player.
100%. I think there is one caveat that I would say as a coach.
Thank you, Rutgers University. Psychology major. Come on, I have to make you guys laugh.
So I think that there is one caveat to that, and that is to make sure as a coach you're looking out for action-based words. If somebody says, and not necessarily a goalkeeper might not necessarily say this, but the word is creative. The trouble is you can't really do creative all the time. I think you can just about do explosive all the time. I think you can just about do, what was the word you used, Michael? Dynamic. I don't love dynamic because I just think there's something that underpins dynamic. When I'm lively, I'm dynamic. When I'm sharp, I'm dynamic. You've got to bring it back. Strip it to a word that a player can enact or act. So I absolutely, I love the fact that you like that, Saskia, and I can't recommend enough. Watch what the player is doing, and then if they're doing something really good, ask them what they experienced, and get them to sum up what they did in some, in the style of some action-based words. But if they're giving you some words that they can't deliberately, intentionally repeat, you have to try to get them to create a word that they can deliberately, intentionally repeat. Does that make sense?
No, I mean, I think it does, and I think I love the fact that when you said the thing about the dynamic, because then I use the example of a top hand save. Well, the thing is when you're talking about an action like that, and you're saying dynamic, if a goalkeeper starts now thinking they have to make a top hand save in order to be dynamic or lively or whatever, that's going to be a detriment as well too. That's a negative. So it's got to be a repeatable action over and over again. That's not based on the scenario, but more based on the physical nature of being fluid in movement and that sort of thing. If I'm trying to understand it correctly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's got to resonate with the player, but it can't be something just random that they can't actually repeat. It's got to be something that they can deliberately do. So then if you go into the next activity, you can then reinforce. So, if it is explosive, well, I felt explosive there, and that enabled me to get my top right, enabled me to just get my hand to it several times there, explosive. Then you can then, okay, great. Show me explosive, show me explosive, show me explosive,
I got a question here, Dan, in regards to this, because we were just talking about, if you're using certain language and now you're getting the wrong, I don't know if wrong is the right word, not the response that you wanted to get.
Yeah.
Can you pivot in the middle, and can you change your language, or is the damage already done and you kind of have to scrap it and go, well, I'm going to have to go back to my session design and I'll have to start all over again?
Well, I suppose it's a big question now. I wouldn't have thought. I wouldn't have thought so. I mean, I think that that's where I say it's a big question is because it almost feels like there's a call for a little bit of coach vulnerability there. That you don't. I think please tell me if I'm going off topic here. I don't think as a coach you have to be the person who is all seeing and all knowing, and is the person who, yes, as a coach you want to be maybe the one who has the expertise in the relationship here, in the coach-athlete relationship. But coaching is not always, but can be a co-creation, and so getting feedback from players is absolutely vital. And I remember, when I was working with AFC Bournemouth, and I was working alongside Ant White and Mossy, who were the goalkeeping coaches, and you had you had Asmir Begovic, you had Mark Travers, who's the Republic of Ireland standing goalkeeper, second goalkeeper, and Aaron Ramsdale, who was the second goalkeeper behind Jordan Pickford in the Euros this year. You've got good goalkeepers there, and I said to them, I think one thing we could potentially include here is feedback in session. Whether it's using that scaling idea or it's just getting feedback from players, I think is vital in terms of how it's going. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question here, but you can absolutely pivot, because if a player says I'm not feeling it here, or I do think you've got to have an element of vulnerability there. Now you can push back and say, well, come on, I'm not seeing your game face, I'm not seeing these key words. But also you can actually give yourself a window, an opportunity to go, okay, well, tell me about that. What do you need from me that might be different? What can I shift up here? As well as feeding them what you think they're missing. So I think I'm not a big believer that a coach has to be all seeing and all knowing and authoritarian. I think authoritative, but not authoritarian. And so giving space for vulnerability for both the player and the coach, and co-creating a session, even though you've sat down to write the session plan, co-creating a session that might pivot in the middle. I think that's fine. There will be different thoughts and philosophies on that.
Yeah, Saskia, I would love your thoughts on this, because you're in the trenches right now. You're at the highest level right here. Because you've seen it at the highest level from in all different respects, when as a player and now as a coach. What in your mind are, when you get in a situation like this where your words aren't working or anything like that has worked for you? Maybe you can give some advice to some younger coaches out there.
Well, I think that I never try to use what worked for me on somebody else. Like, everybody's different. And I, being in the trenches, as you said, and each of my players is a different person. And I try to find out, and I take the time to find out what their triggers are going to be, how I work with them. And I have open lines of communication. I've had, let's take Kelly, for example. Kelly has come to me and said, she got so caught up in trying to do things the way she thought I wanted her to do things, which I never push on anybody, because of the way Lauren does something, that she lost who she was as a goalkeeper and how she trained and her intensity and stuff. And I'm like, Kelly, I want you to be you. You're here for a reason. If we can tweak things, enhance things and stuff like that, that's fine. But I'm not here to change you as a goalkeeper into what I think a goalkeeper should be. I'm here to take your best attributes and make you the best you can be. And that comes down to in their mind as well, and their trigger words as well, and everything. So you have to have those open lines of communication with your players. It's not a blanket thing. It's not, I'm the goalkeeper coach and this is how everybody should do it. And I'm dealing with this right now with one of my privates, young girl coming up, just joined a new club, and their goalkeeper's coach is like, look, you passed your cough through the thing.
That's how much power I have. That's why I'm a psychologist.
I know. It's like,
you will have a cough.
But this goalkeeper coach is saying you have to do this. You have to do the spin move to get up. That's how you need to get up. And her dad texted me today going, she had her first practice. This is what the goalkeeper coach is saying. And I'm like, well, first of all, yes, I can teach it to her. Absolutely. Because I have talked to her about this already. I gave her multiple options to find the most efficient way for her as an athlete to get up. And instead, I got a goalkeeper coach over here saying, this is the way to do it. What are you doing? Because if that isn't efficient for this athlete, and this is in their mind now, and these are the words you're speaking to them, no. What I said to her and what I said to the father is, why don't we'll train all different techniques, and whatever is more efficient for you is what we're going to settle on. And that might be different for little Mike or whatever, or sorry, I had to. But that verbiage and everything is so important. And yeah. I totally disagreed with it. And maybe this is the right spin move is the best thing for her. When I was training it with her, I don't really think she was getting it. I think that, just the quick kick up and into set position is best for her. But, I will train it more with her. But at the same time, that should have been the verbiage and the wording. And sorry, I went off on a tangent, but it just made me think.
That's okay. I mean, look, it's a good tangent to have, because there needs to be more communication, and quite frankly, this is why people like Danny Williams are so important, guys, not just as players, but also for us as coaches, to get this type of guidance and feedback and education as well too. And the dogs agree.
Yeah, Jagger said, "Hey, I'm doing the spin move right now to get up from the ground."
David Downs does have a he just got back to us right now, and what he was saying is that an example would be, I had a player who lost some confidence catching the ball from crosses and started punching the ball and grew in confidence and has now begun to both catch and punch. He told me when he punched the ball, he felt more powerful. He actually called this power. We now use this word when practicing punching.
Brilliant. No, I don't have anything to add to that. I think it's a great trigger word. Whether one would use it more widely across techniques, skills, that's possibly worth exploring. Could power be related to footwork and handling? Possibly not, but great coaching, just great coaching. You're listening to the person in front of you. You're asking the right questions. You're extracting from them a word that they're using, and it's putting them in that moment in their optimal mindset. And that is one of the most for me, it's one of the most underappreciated things, is that if you want every single action, every single skill, every single responsibility executed with attention, intensity, and intent. And so what David is doing there, helping that player utilize that word, is he's executing the punch, or maybe now the catch as well, with power. And what power does is it helps that player release testosterone, adrenaline. It increases their heart rate slightly. It does all the internal. It changes the internal mechanisms that helps that player execute at the right intensity with positive intent. And there's so many goals that go in against, not necessarily due to poor technique, just as a consequence of poor technique, but as a consequence of a lack of intensity and an inhibition, which leads to poor technique. And just a couple of things to say, and that's what you saw a lot with the punditry here in England. Is that pundits will talk at the behavioural level and not at the psychological level. So they might say, with the England-Scotland game, England were lethargic, and and in an Italian game for 60 minutes they were on the back foot and they lost their shape and they went backwards. But there's a reason behind that. There's an inhibition there. There's an internal set of internal sensations, feelings, and emotions that's driving the team shape, that's driving slower anticipation, poorer awareness, poorer decisions, slower decisions. So the internal drives the external. So what David is doing there is fantastic. Just briefly speaking to what Saskia said there, if I can remember, I don't think I can remember. I think it slipped from my mind. But I love everything that she said. Well, yeah, it's the co-creation. I mean, I love the way that what you're talking about is listening to your players. It's coach-athlete relationships. It's co-orientation. It's understanding that every player under your guidance, is an individual, has different needs, wants, hopes, doubts, beliefs, expectations, values, has their own inner story. And look at that player there. That player had weaved an inner story of, well, I've got to do everything that Saskia wants. And you're like, whoa, hold on a minute. Yeah. But that's what human beings do, is they create an inner story that might not reflect reality. And that's what this player has done. But because because a philosophy of yours is to have a close coach athlete relationship, it enabled you to find that out and then sort that out. That to me is absolutely imperative. You said something else, but I can't remember what it was. But it was all good.
Well, obviously, Dan, you've been saying a lot, because for years you've helped David Downs to his journey to become a UEFA B licensed coach. So he wants to thank you for that.
I'll invoice David Downs tomorrow.
I do want to ask this question right here, Dan, because we've been discussing, and obviously, I think David was talking about working with a younger goalkeeper. I think one of the mistakes I've made as a coach when it comes to language and using words is that based on the environment I'm in, certain words are going to be beneficial and some are going to be detrimental. And I think I've made the mistake of using language that's overtly complicated when it doesn't need to be complicated, because I want to, prove, how important this is, or how much I know, or whatever, especially as a younger coach. And then you're just bringing up some very simple language being used at the highest of all levels. And if at the highest of all levels they can use simple language, why do we need to muddy the waters at the foundational stages and overtly complicate it?
I don't think you do. I've remembered what Saskia was saying. Michael, do you mind if I just reflect on that a second?
Not
because
at all.
I think it's really important. The last thing you said there, Saskia, was you gave that goalkeeper options. Or you give goalkeepers options, because that young goalkeeper, that she's got a goalkeeping coach at her club who's sort of saying you must do it this way. I mean, let's take skill acquisition aside, which basically all the research literature in skill acquisition suggests that no human being does one movement in one way, and that our movement varies. If you watch a professional golfer, they'll move the club in various ways. So there's that to say. But I love what you did there as a coach, because you gave options, you gave choice. And again, all the research literature, or some research literature, it's actually from a woman called Rebecca Luthwaite. She's done some great work around coaching and choice. When you give athletes choice, you turn down the volume of anxiety. You give them
absolutely. But my worry in that is that I'm going to give her the choice, and she goes back to the club, and he's saying you don't have a choice. And then I explained to the father and said, I go, first of all, you have the power in this situation. You can come to this gentleman and say, listen, she can train both. She can train both ways to get up. Why don't and make him make him feel stupid if that's the situation, but say to him, why don't you decide after you see her get up both ways and you work with her on both ways, what's more efficient for her? And use that word. What's more efficient getting from one point to the other, getting back in set position and everything like that? Come in educated, and I will do my best as her private coach to educate you on what she's doing and the different reasons. If this is the best thing for her, then it'll work itself out. But the fact that the coach didn't give the options is what bothers me.
Look, absolutely, Saskia, and obviously the situation, whilst it's not a unique situation, I'm sure.
I'm
the
sure
situation that this is, and obviously I was commenting towards choice in general as coaching is a great form of coaching. I think what you said is perfect. I mean, I think when you're dealing with very young players, then ultimately parental involvement and intervention is probably required and necessary. And look, I can only but agree with what you said. It's a challenge, I guess, when you're doing private coaching and you've got a young player who has a club coach who's doing that. So absolutely. Should we go to what not to say from a language perspective? Well, don't say don't, for starters. which is called. It's the old don't think of a pink elephant.
Oh man!
Yeah, exactly. It's actually
Now it's all I'm thinking about.
yeah, there you go. I've got into your head. See, you're just thinking of a pirate on a pink elephant now. I bet you. Oh, she's gone now. She's just disappeared. That's it. I'm off. That was studied by a gentleman called Daniel Wegner, a psychologist, studied his whole life. It's called ironic processing theory. Obviously, that term ironic processing. Don't. When you don't think of a pink elephant, you think of a pink elephant. So it's just, it's not that drastic. It's just deemed as a suboptimal way, an ineffective way to communicate. Don't do this. Don't drop it. Don't go in this direction. Don't go in that direction, and be more positive and affirmative in terms of the actions, the instructions that you want them to take on board. What is the?
Oh my God! You do not really. Are you kidding me?
I had to.
That was very scary there for a minute. I wonder what that was.
The pink elephant. Well, Shimmer's got a granddaughter now. We have a whole baby room. Of course it's a pink elephant. Sorry. I had to. This is my favorite episode ever.
Oh my God.
Right. So anyway, back in the real world, I'll try and use all of my techniques on myself to collect myself there.
Focus.
So I think, look, Michael, I agree. And look, I've been guilty on this episode. I'm so passionate about sports psychology that I know that I can be guilty of using complex words or complicated terms, and I try my best to kind of apologize and go, hey, sorry, I'm going to use this word now, interoception, or hey, there's this really cool theory and I do apologize that I'm going to use it here. It's called ironic processing theory. Sorry. And make a bit of a joke about it. But I think simple language, look, I'm not reinventing the wheel here, and I'm not telling people online what they don't already know, but utilizing simple language is vital. I think there's let's think about it here. There's a difference between simple and easy. So we can use simple language, show me alert, show me lively. It's not always easy to be lively and alert, especially if you just conceded a sloppy goal, especially if you feel flat and lethargic. Feelings are tough to manage, to negotiate. And so we can talk about being alert and lively. We're using simple language, but that language isn't necessarily easy to enact or to do. We can talk about here the best players in the world, best goalkeepers in the world, making things look simple, but what they're doing isn't easy. But I think using simple language is really important. I think there's simple but no simpler, if that makes sense. I don't think we should be scared as coaches. I'm perhaps not talking about the player-coach interaction here. I don't think we should be scared as coaches to read literature that might be deemed as complicated, books that stretch us, that introduce, perhaps tough to consider coaching practices or anything or psychological terms. Give yourself a chance to figure these things out. And I think don't be scared to deliver what could be deemed as complicated activities. Why not? Why not turn up the volume of stretch from time to time? As long as coaches have two dials, a stretch dial and a support dial. And I think if you're going to stretch players linguistically or through a tough to accomplish activity, that's fine. Just turn up the volume of support. Be there for them, support them through that. So I think those are the really things I'd say about complication and complexity. Is I think it's okay as long as you're there to support players and explain and help them understand what you're saying. I think a definite no-no is to start to use complicated terms that you don't really understand yourself. And boy, there's plenty of those for me, I can assure you of that. So, I think that's a definite no-no. If you can't explain to the goalkeeper what you actually mean, then avoid using the term or engaging in the activity.
I absolutely love what you just said right there, because I know I've been guilty of that in the past, and I've gotten caught, deer in the headlights, especially as a younger coach, and then a player goes, well, what do you mean by that? And I go, oh, it's a blah, blah. I'm like, wait, are you trying to explain it to yourself there? And they can kind of see it in your head. And then all of a sudden you've lost all confidence from that young goalkeeper, because now they don't see you as a teacher anymore, but they're questioning everything that you do, because it sounds like you're questioning everything that you're doing right there, which kind of leaves me kind of like and Dan, I know you've got the cough and everything, so we'll start wrapping up so you can rest easy for the rest of the evening. But I do have a question in regards to from a playing standpoint, because we talk about telling our goalkeepers to have conversations with their outfield players and to use language and all of that, but we don't teach them how to do it. We just tell them to, hey, you need to communicate. Hey, you need to tell them blah 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 or whatever. And so how do we as educators, how do we help our players do that so they feel comfortable? Because obviously, especially when we're talking the foundational stages, there's the insecurity of being an adolescent in play here too.
Me personally, I know you're not pinpointing me out, but I always break everything down and teach them how to communicate, when to communicate, and why to communicate. Because kids are so literal. You gotta communicate with your back. You gotta communicate with your team. They're telling people to shoot from 120 yards away. Well, nobody's listening to you. Just like the forward calling goalkeeper, nobody's listening to her, hopefully. So go ahead, Dan.
No, look, I'm glad you interjected, because I just think you're spot on. And if I was going to start anywhere, that I think you eloquently put it. Kids are so literal, but older, more experienced players, older teens, players in their 20s, I think that. I think that sometimes as coaches we can be guilty of not being specific enough. And we're too general, and we shouldn't be scared to go, okay, if I want a player to communicate, where does this start? And it starts exactly where you said, Saskia, which is you've got to break it down for players. You're going to break down a skill to the specific technical components of that skill, then you need to break down communication. And I think perhaps we put that to the side. We kind of demand it, but we don't actually specifically teach it. So I think we've got to teach it in a very specified or specific way. And then I think we've got to, on top of that, layering that, I think it's actually setting objectives in training around that communication. Again, we might set objectives around actions, techniques, skills, but hey, let's set objectives around communication. I would compare this to, say, leadership, where you've got so many coaches, and I understand why, I empathize, who sort of bemoan a lack of leadership. But actually, when you ask them, well, what are you doing to improve that leadership? They're usually doing something, but they're not doing enough. And so I say to them, well, you've got to bring leadership into every single activity, and you've got to empower players to engage in leadership practices. And it's the same for communication. If you're doing a small-sided game and the goalkeeper has come over from their own individual training onto the field, then it's actually making that objective, that communication piece, a number one objective here, alongside the footwork and the handling and the 1v1s and all that stuff. It's got to be front and center. Otherwise, you don't change behavior. And that's what all this is it's educating behavior and then giving players a platform to change behavior or improve the kind of behaviors you want to see.
Right. And Timothy just came up with a comment. If you want to put it back up. Timothy, yes, you're right. But what are you telling your keeper to communicate? And that's where we have to be more specific as coaches and as educators. You can say, organize the field. You have the best view of the field. You can say, and you see, but these are kids. So they need the verbiage. They need to understand. They need to be students of the game. What am I actually communicating? And what we find a lot, or what I find a lot, is that you tell a kid to communicate and they're just babbling away, like talking, because they think talking is what the coach wants to hear. So if I'm just talking and you hear me talking, that means I'm communicating. No, you need to educate them the same as you said, Dan, teaching them how to do a collapse dive or a power dive, or teaching them footwork. It's gotta be broken down. It has to be sound bites. It has to be simple. It has to be for a reason. And they have to understand the game that's developing in front of them and why they're giving the communication. And that's what I meant by, I got kids sitting here telling kids to shoot from 120 yards away because they think that means they're communicating, and nobody's listening to you, right? So when are they listening to you? And I think it's really important that you have to break it down, slow it down, and this has to be more of a specific thing. Like, it's not general.
I just want to say, go ahead, Dan.
Sorry, I would also say I love everything Saskia said, and I also love Timothy's point. And we could do a very big deep dive here, and I'm sure we won't.
Oh yeah,
one has to. This comes under a categories of knowledge thing, in as much as there's knowledge about the game, and there's knowledge in the game. So knowledge about the game could be a coach who is teaching a young player about communication, when they might communicate, the kind of things they might communicate to players. Knowledge in the game is that first person perspective that Timothy is talking about.
Absolutely.
And that is where coaching becomes a highly skilled activity, in as much as you might instruct to teach about the game and ask questions, specifically divergent questions, so questions you can't answer yourself because it only comes from the experience of the player, around, well, what did you see there? What were you seeing there? And what could you have applied there with relation to what we've spoken about before? So you're educating attention. Sorry, go ahead, Saskia.
Right. No. So, and so we have to remember, and to all goalkeepers out there, one that I know is watching right now that I'm going to talk about in a minute, but to all goalkeepers out there, this is the transition into the next level. And you have to understand something. The next level, look, I can teach you how to dive. I can teach you how to get crosses. I can do all of that stuff. But the next level of goalkeeping and the highest level is understanding what's going on in front of you. And the communication and game. I know we've gotten off the topic, but it's seriously understanding the system the other team's coming at you with, understanding where your holes are and your breakdowns with, and how you move your chess pieces, as I like to call them, so to counteract that, because you are the captain on that field and you do have the best view. So how are you manipulating your game and verbalizing that? And this is what communication is. Communication is not great shot. That's great too. That helps your team, like high five. But communication, what we're talking about, diving deeper, is actually really manipulating what's going on in front of you. And that comes from your coaches out there to educate your players as what the game is in front of them, and whether the team you're playing against, from video and everything like that. That's a total nother level. We could have another 2-hour conversation about. Well, that is the next level of goalkeeping. Yeah. That is it.
It is, and that comes. I mean, I wrote about this yesterday, and it went kind of viral in its own mini way, because I wrote about the Chiellini foul on Saka, and I wrote about what's happening in the brain at that moment, and the schemas that Chiellini's got, and how he makes a fast decision, a foul, and it had a lot of controversy around it. But
it's actually a brilliant foul.
Well,
in a sense.
Yes, I agree, because I wrote something and I said this is not a value judgment, and I had 1,001 people saying, you shouldn't. But
he would have been on the goal. It's a professional foul. I think you should have gotten red, but it's a professional foul.
what I was trying to explain is his knowledge about the game and knowledge in the game combined in that moment to create fast decision. All the research coming out at the moment, there's a lot of great research from the UK, which is there's 3 types of decision. There's a no thought intuitive decision, so that almost like a reaction save. There's a fast thought decision, and there's a slow thought decision. And so what you're talking about there, Saskia, a lot of what you're talking about comes from knowledge about the game. So it could be how to communicate as a goalkeeper, but it could also be the game model that you've got. So at UCLA, you're going to have a game model, and you're going to try and help your goalkeepers understand that game model. So that's knowledge about the game. Knowledge in the game is the interaction with the knowledge about the game model with the things that they're experiencing in the game from their perspective. Right. And that's
a whole nother conversation.
It's an advanced form of coaching, and it's about educating attention and stuff like that. But we should do that one time, Michael. You can
absolutely, really because that comes down to game management, when to understand that and everything, and that's huge. And this is like we could talk for another 3 hours. Which is why you could hypothesize why the Italians potentially had, and I'm going to get myself in so much trouble. No, bring it.
Had an advantage because arguably their players, even if it's just through experience, are cognitively more competent than the English players because they're more experienced, and just because of the culture of Italian football and the way
the culture is game management. The culture of their football
it's game manipulation.
It's game intelligence. It's manipulation. Yeah. It's when to know to grab somebody by their collar and pull them down. When to know to fake an injury. Which we all hate watching, but it's true. It's true.
And it's the relationship, understanding the relationship between space, ball, and players, and that's almost a bit more Spanish type thing, and the way that they're taught. But
Mike, we got to book out another 3 hours right now.
Yeah. I mean, geez, I was trying to save Dan's voice because he's got the throat thing going on.
Yeah, no, we're good. I have to go too. I have a private. I'm like me and Dan, Mike, you could go. Dan, just give me a call later. We'll talk.
I know. We could just do
Artie,
this.
Mate. Arr.
Well, Saskia, I think you had a little announcement.
I do.
Before we start plugging.
I know Jamie Campbell is watching right now. I am beyond proud of you committing to Colorado. You are going to be an amazing college goalkeeper and beyond, and it's going to be awesome playing against you and watching your career grow. And I'm so excited for you. What a great school, what a great program, and they're going to get an amazing goalkeeper. Mike, Jamie, so
absolutely. No, Jamie's one of these students. I mean, she tunes in, she watches, she listens to the podcast, she reads books.
You've never seen anybody more committed to training.
Yeah. And she emphasizes the mental side as well too. So what a great episode to give her that shout out and to congratulations on that commitment. I know how difficult that. Dan, that's a whole other episode in itself. Is the mental gymnastics of the recruiting process as a youth player here in the United States and the universities. It's a whole interesting situation.
We've got about 30 odd colleges who are utilizing my online platform, starting in August 2021. So I'm well acquainted with the college system.
I'm super proud. Awesome. Congratulations, Jamie.
Congratulations to Jamie.
Well, let's that's a great way to segue into some Dan Abraham's plugs right here. Dan, obviously you got the Sports Psych show going on, and obviously there's the phenomenal books that you've got, and you've always got obviously your private practice and all the different seminars you do and everything. What's on the books for you for the summer and the fall?
Well, firstly, thank you so much for inviting me on and talking Pirates with me. It's been great. I think this is the second, and some football psychology on the side. I think the second thing to say is actually I'm quite excited at the moment just because do try and catch me on LinkedIn. or Facebook at Dan Abrahams Soccer, and actually I tweet this out as well. I'm doing I've always done a little LinkedIn post every day, but what LinkedIn have started to do, they've actually increased the volume with which the amount you can write a post. So at the moment it's almost like it's quite an extended thing, and I've committed myself to writing a different article every single day on LinkedIn, and that's what's getting a huge amount of traction at the moment. So I wrote about Chiellini yesterday, I wrote about inattentional blindness today. So every day I'm committing myself to writing something. It's even if I've got to do it at midnight, I'm going to do it. So please do follow me there, or catch me on Twitter where I actually tweet out the mini post as well. That's at Dan Abrahams 77. Sports Psych Show. Yeah, we're up to episode 150 this week. So thank you so much. And everybody on there is far smarter than me. I mean, this week we had Professor Mark Williams from UT University and Professor Nicola Hodges, two of the world's leading skill acquisition academics. And okay, yeah, it's academia, but we really try to bring it to life as best we can. So catch me on there as well. I think other than that, I'm just cracking on with my consultancy. I mean, I'm starting with a very good goalkeeper next week who I can't name, but I'm really excited to get started with that player. So I just crack on and do my consultancy work, and hoping to come over to the States in, we've got or if anybody's interested in my online academy, you can join us.
Goodness. I feel like we just need credits rolling up right now. Like another credit thing, and this.
If anybody's interested in my online academy, you can join for £49, and you can learn about all the things that I teach players every single day. And we're supporting a number of clubs, high schools, and colleges. So super excited to support them this coming fall. And hey, I should be over for the convention in January.
Oh,
so yeah, let's grab a whiskey or a beer.
Where is it?
Do some pirate noises.
Arr! Let's grab some whiskey.
I don't know, where is it?
I think it's in Kansas City, and there's a rumor that Saskia might be in high demand for that convention too. So there's a rumor.
I haven't heard that, so I guess that's something me and Mike have to talk about. What do you mean I'm going to be in high demand?
I guess you didn't get the email. Okay.
The 3,000? I know. Let me go sift through it. No, I will look. I did not get the email, but I'm excited. That means
3,000 word email.
It wasn't from me, Sus. It wasn't from me. It was from somebody else.
Oh,
okay.
And I would absolutely love to go to Kansas City, have some steak and a whiskey. 100%.
Yeah. All right. Well, I might have just
makes great barbecue. I'm down.
I might have just opened Pandora's box.
No, I'm really excited, but now I'm gonna get like 100 invites. So maybe we shouldn't have blasted that out.
If you'd like Saskia Weber to come to Kansas City, guys, at Saskia_Weber on all social media platforms. So reach out to her and tell her how much you want her pink elephant to be in Kansas City.
And her pirate impressions.
I'm down.
Oh my gosh. At Goalkeeper Podcast on all social media platforms. Contact at Inside the 18. That's the number 18media.com. If you have a guest suggestion or topic suggestion, if you want to reach out to me directly at Michael Magid or michaelmagidcomedy.com for all my tour dates. That's all the time on Inside the 18, guys, and we are out. Later, guys.